Hey guys, welcome back to the 30-year-old Honda XR250L restore. So got it up and running. Today I'm actually going to bleed the brakes on this thing, front and rear. I do have a brake bleeder. It's just a cheap Harbor Freight one, but they work pretty good. Basically all you need. I mean, you can do it without one. It's easier if you're just one person to have a brake bleeder like this. But if you have two people, you really don't need one. You can actually just use a hose and something to catch your brake fluid in. But we're going to replace the brake fluid because this brake fluid is 30 years old. So we got some .4 brake fluid to put in it. That's what it calls for. We're going to take this master cylinder cap off right here. Back here's our brake caliper. And then all we got to do is keep this full. One thing you do when you're bleeding, and basically I'm like bleeding it, only I'm going to actually run this through, keep pouring fresh in until all the old stuff goes out and the new stuff comes through. The number one thing is to not let this go dry, because if you let this go dry, then you're sucking air into the system. So always keep it full as you bleed the brakes. So the first thing we got to do is get this cap off right here. So up here we have the reservoir, and the first thing we got to do is take the cap off. On this bike, it actually has a little thing to keep the cap from coming off, this little metal bracket. So we're going to take that little metal bracket off so we can get to it. Then we can take the cap off here. And in here you're going to have this rubber on the top. Make sure you don't get dirt on that or drop it. We'll just set it up on top right now. And basically we want to keep this full as we bleed the brake fluid through. Okay, so bleeding the brakes on a motorcycle, pretty much all motorcycles are the same. There may be some differences, but most of them is going to be basic. You're going to have your brake caliper back here. You're going to have your reservoir right here. You have your master cylinder. The brake pedal pushes brake fluid through this, out of your reservoir, down through this hose, squeezes your brake pads together, and squeezes onto the disc. That's how your brakes work. Back here you have a bleeder valve, and what we're going to do is loosen this bleeder valve. We just want to tighten it back up after I just broke it loose. Then we're going to take our vacuum tool right here, and we're going to put this end right here on to the bleeder valve. Basically, we want to pump this thing up, get some vacuum on it before we break it loose. Before I do that, I want to make sure that I'm full of brake fluid so I do not run out. And this brake fluid is .4 brake fluid. So I kind of got this little tub here, basically, so this ain't just laying on the ground. I want this to stay vertical, upright. Now we're going to pump this pressure up on this thing. Once we get pressure pumped up, we're going to break the bleeder screw loose. It should start sucking the brake fluid out of the reservoir. You can see the brake fluid coming through right here. So I can just keep pumping a little pressure on it. You do not want to overfill your container, because if you do, your brake fluid is going to come up and into your bleeder. But we shouldn't have enough brake fluid to do that. That actually holds quite a bit. We're taking out the old contaminated brake fluid. This brake fluid is, like I say, 30 years old, so definitely it needs to be changed. I think Honda actually recommends you changing it like every couple years, which most people never do that, but I think that's what's recommended. Get this up a little higher where I can break it open a little further. My wrench up here. Now when I break that loose, I can break it loose and open it up a little further, so maybe it'll work better. There we go. Now we're getting some brake fluid to it in a hurry. Now we want to stop it before that thing runs down too low, so we can actually just shut this off. Make sure we have more brake fluid in here. We definitely don't want that running low. If it gets down to the bottom, it's going to suck air in there, and you definitely don't want air in the system. Shut it off again. Add a little bit more in here. Starting to look like I'm getting the new brake fluid coming through now. Fill this up a little bit more one more time. just to make sure. I'd rather waste a little brake fluid than to not get all the nasty stuff out of there. You can see that this coming through here is a lot cleaner now. It's not near as dark. So that's how I know that the new stuff is coming through. Shut that off. On this reservoir, we have a lower line and an upper line, and we want it between the two. I usually just go ahead and fill it up to the upper. And basically, because you don't want no air in there, if you happen to lay your motorcycle over on its side, then any air that's in there can go up into the brake line, and we don't want that. So we have all new stuff through here now. I got this shut off. I can take my bleeder valve off here, put my little cap back on there. That's to keep dirt out of this bleeder valve. And now we'll put the cap back on that. Okay, so now before we put the cap back on, and we actually I could have put this rag down here before I actually poured fluid in. Luckily, I hadn't spilt a lot on there anywhere or nothing. But you want to put a grease rag here, and the reason why is because brake fluid will actually eat your paint off your bike. And this is going to catch anything that spills out when I put this cap on, because if it's full enough, it's going to push some out around the threads and out. We don't want any getting on the paint of the bike. Like that. Make sure our brake fluid is wiped off of the outside of the reservoir. And we take our little cap holder, stick it back on here. Okay, we're good to go there. Check my pedal. Oh yeah, we got good brakes. So we shouldn't get any air in it because of the way I bled it out. And luckily we didn't. If you don't have no pedal, that means you got air into it. You need to go ahead and bleed some more through it to get all the air out. Now we'll move on to the front. Okay, so as far as bleeding the front, this is our master cylinder, our reservoir, and our master cylinder all in one. Our brake lever pushes the brake fluid through this hose down into the caliper, which squeezes the pads together. We got to take this cap off here. Take a Phillips. Take the screws out of here. Be careful not to drop your screws. And before I take it off, I'm actually going to go ahead and put my grease rag around this. And hopefully that will keep any spillage from getting on any of the painted surfaces. Pull this off. There's our top. Then we have this plastic piece here with our rubber piece. And our rubber on this one is basically like the rear, just a different shape. And this pretty nasty looking fluid in here, so definitely needs to be changed out. You can see some on the top here. I'll spray that, clean that off. Go ahead and top this off because it's actually really low. And one thing you want to do is keep your handlebars level, because if you turn your bars, it's liable to tilt this master cylinder and leak some of your fluid out all over the place. You don't want that. Just kind of keep it flat. Okay, so on the front we basically have the same thing. We have a bleeder valve right here on the caliper. We want to pull the rubber cap off, put our wrench on there, but this one's going to be kind of tight. It's a hard place to get into, really. Break it loose. I may have to use the open end part of this one, I would say. It's kind of a hard place to get into. I'm going to put our hose on here. Now we go ahead and pump up our pressure and break our bleeder valve loose. There comes the brake fluid, and that's some nasty looking stuff in that front one. It looks worse than the rear. I gotta keep an eye up there. I definitely do not want that running out, because as I said, it do the same as the rear. If it runs out, it's going to suck air into the system. Go ahead and do this again. And I can't see that up there, so I definitely want to shut this off every little bit and check it, because I want to make sure that I'm not running out up there. So I topped it off again. Shut it back off. I'm going to go ahead and empty this because, as I said, you don't want this getting too full, because if you do, you're going to suck brake fluid into your bleeder. So I want to empty this out. And I'm just going to keep repeating this till I get all clear stuff through here. That's still dark right now. It's definitely starting to become clean now. You can see it's a lot cleaner. Hopefully you can see that from that distance. One more time, I think we'll get it. Now all we got is brand new, nice looking brake fluid coming through, so we can shut this back off. Check our lever, make sure we still have brakes. And very cool, we still have brakes, no errors in the line, so we are good to go. We'll go ahead and stick the cap back on here, make sure that we don't have any mess on here. We don't want paint to be eaten off by the brake fluid, but as soon as you do this, after you get the cap back on, if you take and rinse it off with water, it will actually rinse that brake fluid right off. Okay, so I actually cleaned this off with WD-40, then wiped it off. Go ahead and set it back in there, and I see it's going to spill a little brake fluid, which is fine. We just need to make sure we got a rag there to catch it all. Then we get down here, we'll take the water hose and just rinse all the brake fluid off this. Okay guys, so that is how you can actually replace or bleed your brakes on pretty much any motorcycle. Most of them is going to be the same thing, not much differences in any of them. Thank you all for watching. Click the thumbs up, subscribe down below for more videos, and we'll catch you on the next one. Right on.